All right, good morning, everyone. I want to welcome you to GRCC's Social Science Department Race, Ethnicity, and Identity Conference. The conference actually kicked off on Friday last week with a guided tour of the Jim Crow Museum, and I know some folks in the audience were there. But this morning we have a special lecture from one of our longtime professors in the Social Science Department. His name is Dr. Cedric Williams. Professor Williams has a BA in sociology from Texas Christian University, a master's in sociology from Northwestern, and pursued some PhD work at Washington State University in sociology as well. His research interests are the decline of American society as it relates to morals, values, and religiosity, and criminology, social inequality, and race and ethnicity. He also has a divinity degree. So he is an ordained minister. That's correct, isn't it, Cedric? All right. So I expect that this will be a lively session. I'm not going to waste much time. I'm going to turn it right over to Dr. Williams, so let's give him a round of applause. I will say one thing. I think Dr. Williams is probably going to allow for questions throughout the lecture. Is that right?
I am. Yes.
Okay. And if you have a question at any time, either before or after, we need you to use these microphones. We film this, and the lectures appear on our GRCC YouTube channel, so you can go back and watch it. I'm sure you'll have such a blast you'll want to go back and watch it again. But we need to record your voices. I don't say this to try to discourage you from asking questions. It's no big deal. Just raise your hand, and one of us will run a microphone around to you, and you can ask the question. Okay? All right. It's all yours, Cedric.
Thank you, Mike. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I don't normally get an opportunity to speak to groups this large, but it's actually quite refreshing to see all of you here this morning. I know you're not here just to see me, but you might have been either forced or cajoled or encouraged or extra credit or something like that to get you to come out, but I'm glad you're here anyway. It is the Race and Ethnicity and Identity Conference, and the subject that I want to deal with this morning is the myth of the PostRacial Society. Before we actually get into all of that, please feel free anytime during the lecture or presentation to actually ask questions, and we'll deal with those as we go along. I'm not one that stands on formality too much, hence the reason for not wearing a suit and tie. I think if you can be comfortable, I can be comfortable too, okay? So feel free to jump in at any time. Really doesn't matter what your question might relate to, as long as it's on the topic. All of the things that Mike talked about in terms of my credentials are really unimportant as it relates to this topic. I've been doing race and ethnicity issues for quite a few years, and unfortunately we are still not making the progress that we really need to make as it relates to people in general. So unfortunately, I have to come back and do this all over again. But it seems like no matter what the title is, the problems remain the same. So today I'm going to try to do it in this manner. What is a post-racial society, and try to define that for you, or have you help me define it. Deal with historical issues as it relates to this issue. Provide some statistical evidence in terms of the myth of post-racial society, and then focus on change and questions. And I've already told you that you can ask questions anytime you get ready. First of all, you help me out. What is meant by a myth? Anybody want to take a swing at this? What's a myth? Anybody? What's a myth?
Something people believe to be true but isn't.
Okay, that's good. Anybody else? Where does that myth come from? Any idea? Well, let me help you out. It's just something that's occurred for a really long period of time, and it's become a part of our culture. And so people pretty much just accept it as is, okay? Well, we're at the post-racial society. By the way, how many of you actually believe that we are in a post-racial society? Let me see your hands. You must not have heard me. Let me say that once again. How many of you actually believe that we are in a post-racial society? Let me see your hands. Nobody actually believes that? Well, if you read the literature, in reality, they say that that's where we are in terms of a post-racial society. So let me define it, okay? By the way, I don't know if any of your professors are requiring you to take notes or whatever, but feel free to do so if necessary. Post-racial society, there are two popular definitions, okay? One of them says that basically race is no longer an issue or an impediment in terms of advancement or progress in our society today. How many of you believe that one? No? Wow, I'm preaching to the choir here. The second definition is that we exist in a completely colorblind society where race is not an issue. So therefore, because we have elected President Barack Obama, who classifies himself as African American, it's no longer an issue, and therefore we're at a colorblind society. How many of you believe that? Wow, it's time to go home. Okay, this is a short lecture. All right. Those two definitions, first of all, while you can find them, are actually wrong. Okay? It's not supported by the statistical evidence anywhere. I don't care where you go. Go to the Census Bureau, you can do the Department of Labor and Statistics, you can do the criminological literature, you can do the literature in terms of Google, you can go anywhere. Look on Bing, you can look for it anywhere, but there's no evidence, in fact, that this issue of a post-racial society is actually done away with. In fact, what we really find is that race is still an important component today in terms of everyday life. However, we still have a few people that refuse to take a look at our country's racial past and admit where we really are. And where are we? I'm an African American. I am also Native American as well. Does anybody see my Native American history as I stand here in front of you? No, because we judge people based upon what? Color. What you look like compared to the dominant society. And the dominant society in 2012 is what? Hello? What's the dominant society? Those of you that are members of the dominant society, okay, what is it? Caucasian, white, okay? And so if you do not have what we would classify as Caucasian or white skin color, you are not a member of the dominant society. Excuse me, you are a member of the dominant society, but if I have dark skin, I am not a member of the dominant society, and therefore, race still becomes an issue for me in terms of advancement. Okay? By the way, why is it I'm not president of Grand Rapids Community College? Yes. I didn't apply for the position. That's one, yes. I'm sorry, you're supposed to have a mic. Excuse me for doing that. Okay, sorry, Steve. Yes, I did not apply for the position. I thought at the time that they were actually going to underpay me, so I thought, no, I won't take the position. So what I decided to do was let somebody else have the job. But if you look at it, in the society, should individuals of color, regardless of what your color is, what your race, your ethnicity, should there be equality or equal access to the position or the job? Yes or no? Yes. Is there? No. Women have equal access to positions the same way that men do? Do they get the same advancement opportunities as men? race plays a larger, believe it or not, factor in terms of advancement, opportunities, etc., especially when we look at our racial past and we figure out where we are today, okay? Why? Because there are still disparities within our society. Are you aware that infant mortality, for example, in Kent County alone, for minorities, is 3 times that of non-minorities? Wow. We're living in the same county. What's the difference? Hello? What's the difference? Anybody have a shot at it?
Could be living conditions, maybe?
Living conditions plays a part, yes. Anything else? Back in the back, Mike.
I'm gonna guess it has something to do with access.
Access, yes. Anything else? Yes.
Income.
Income. Access to health care, educational achievement, employment, unemployment rates. Now, I know some of us will think that we've passed that point where race is no longer important. Okay. Well, we'll see as we go along. Is home ownership equal? And by the way, I don't have a board, but if you were to look at the statistical information, what you would find out is things should line up according to a normal curve. Probability should play a part. All of you have had statistics and all of that good stuff, okay? So if you remember the normal curve, it's a bell curve, a bell-shaped curve. Probability. So that means that we should have what? Equal opportunity. It doesn't necessarily mean equal outcome, but it does mean equal access, equal opportunity. Well, Dr. Williams, but you've made it. Why is it there are others that have not? For lots of reasons. Some of you work jobs and go to school full time, correct? How many of you do that? Let me see your hands. Wow, lots of you. Finding it pretty easy to do? Breezing through, are you? Dean's List every year? Excess money? Well, you decided to buy that new car, new house. A lot of you probably have a large amount of student loans. Yeah. But that's equality. So why aren't you at Harvard, Stanford, Northwestern, my alma mater? Why aren't you there instead of Grand Rapids Community College? Hello? Yes. Sorry, Steve. Right there.
It's more expensive to go to those colleges?
It is more expensive. But if you have the academic credentials, you can get in too. But guess what? When it comes to elementary, junior high, and high school, did all of us have equal opportunities? No. Equal access? Not at all. Some of us didn't do well in our elementary, junior high, and high school days. Okay? Let's look at something else here. First of all, stereotypes, prejudice, rooted in ethnocentrism. This is a little bit of sociology so that at least I can say that I did introduce you to some new things if you haven't already learned them. Stereotypes and prejudice rooted in ethnocentrism, okay? There are stereotypes about every group. I don't care what group it is, everybody has stereotypes. My group, because I happen to be rather large, which you can see, that when you go to the buffet, everybody wants to get in front of me because they believe that I eat more than everybody else does, and therefore they want to make sure that there's food left, okay? And in fact, what you find out is that people that are large actually eat less food than people that are very thin on average. So we've got a lot of stereotypes. I'm an African American, so therefore you know I do like, let's see, chitlins and hog maws and let's see. Oh, I did bring my greens and cornbread with me in my bag, but I didn't want you to see it, so those are hid, okay? That all African Americans play basketball, can dance, etc. Stereotypes, okay? Do you know any African Americans that can't dance and can't sing, can't play basketball? If you've never met one, here's one. Okay, I don't do well. All right, real difficult carrying a tune in a bucket, but that's okay. Basketball, with my bad knees, those days are over with. And if I have a chair, I can shoot the ball. Of course, it has to be down about where my daughter's height is, but I can actually dunk from a chair if the rim's low enough. But there are stereotypes nonetheless, and therefore those stereotypes lead us to prejudge or prejudice towards other individuals, other groups. All Hispanics drive lowriders. Everybody know what a lowrider is? Yeah? Oh, okay. Dice over the dashboard. They all have the hydraulic lifts, right? Okay? And if they're driving a van, then of course, you know, it's a lot of folks in the van. Okay? Yeah. We've got folks that have those large red noses. What group might I be referring to? Anybody? They consume large amounts of alcohol. I'm sorry? Irish. Yeah, remember? They used to call the thing that they picked people up in, they called it a paddy wagon. Oh, stereotypes, prejudice, okay? And all of that is rooted in ethnocentrism, that concept that one group is better than another. For those of you that want the official version, it's an overgeneralization in terms of stereotype about a person's appearance, behavior, or other characteristics. Okay? So everybody here has a stereotype. Okay? Every group, regardless. I just gave you a couple to give you an idea. Okay? So you've got a stereotype. Ethnocentrism, and I've already told you what prejudice is. Prejudice means to prejudge. But ethnocentrism is where one group is believed to be superior than any other group. For example, Professor Light back there and Professor Abed back there, I am superior to them. Wait a minute, what do you mean? I have darker skin than they have. Ethnocentrism. The belief that one group is better than another group, based upon some kind of characteristics. My hair, not very straight, but rather curly and kinky at times, depending upon how long I let it go. Okay? I don't get a perm anymore. Those days are gone with. Okay, those of you that are too young, my perm days were, during my day let's see, it was fried, it was dyed, it was laid to the side. Okay? Ethnocentrism. One group is superior than any other group. Okay? So unfortunately, we identify people based upon what they look like or their group membership. Okay? So everybody here gets identified. So racial profiling exists. Okay? I thought about wearing a hoodie today, but I thought that I might get shot on the way into the college. All of you have seen the recent events where a young man got shot and people were giving their opinion, and one had nerve enough to say it was the hoodie that caused him to get shot. You have one on, and you have a hoodie on. Anybody else? You have a hoodie on. Anybody else? You have one? You have one? I don't think the hoodie caused the problem. But you get identified based upon people's perceptions. So the idea that we are past the racial society in which there is no longer a need for focus on race, ethnicity, or identity, that's a myth for sure. Race, you already know what race is. Race is based upon some kind of a characteristic. Okay? People are classified as inferior or superior based upon what they look like. Skin color is one, hair texture is another, eye shape is another. Okay? Please notice the last statement. It is both a myth and a reality. It's myth because it doesn't really exist. However, if you've ever taken a history or sociology or psychology class, you've heard the term that it is real because people think it is real. Therefore, it's real in its consequences. So unfortunately, in our society, we still deal with people based upon what they look like. Now, we're finding some changes here, but we haven't done away with it yet. The changes come about because the younger generation is less likely to look at the issue of race compared to those that tend to be older. But nonetheless, the belief is that we can do away with race issues now. No need to count, no need to pay attention, etc. Ethnic group is going to be where you have people based upon some cultural or nationality characteristics. Cultural or nationality characteristics. So I belong to both a racial group as well as an ethnic group. Native American is not classified as a race, at least not correctly. It actually falls into the category of an ethnic group or ethnicity. Let me move on. Now, we see the part of this, did I go too far? Let me see. Yeah. 1978, a man by the name of William Julius Wilson wrote a book called The Declining Significance of Race. In this book, he actually defied people and said that race was less important in terms of his or her life chances. And boy, did he take a lot of criticism for that work. Also, there was a man by the name of Charles Willey who came out with a rebuttal to that, and his name, was Charles Willey. I'm sorry, I don't think I put it on this screen, but that's okay. The name is Charles Willey. And the title of the book was The Inclining Significance of Race, where he argues that, in fact, race is still relevant, it's still important, and while there have been changes, those changes are not sufficient to say that we've moved to a colorblind society. Well, let's look at some evidence. The U.S. Census Bureau, for example, says that infant mortality rate for whites is 5.6% versus 13.2% for African Americans, and the maternal mortality rates for whites is 10% versus 26.5% for African Americans. And when you look at Kent County, It's nearly 3 times that of whites. But remember, we still live in a post-racial society. The reason for these: access, opportunity, lack of equality. Please note, for Hispanics, and I hate that, but that's the term that maybe you've learned or been taught, but I'll deal with it for right now. That'll be another lecture. For Hispanics, infant mortality rates, maternal mortality rates, fairly low. Why? Anybody know why? Anybody? No? Let me help you out. Because the Hispanic community is more likely, nationwide as well as in other countries, to use midwives. Whites, less likely to use midwives. Now, there's been a resurgence of midwifery in this country, but still, it's still an issue. What do you mean? Hispanics are less likely to have access to health care as well. You know, in the United States, we have issues in terms of immigration. Let's build a fence, keep people out, right? Yeah. So race is not important at all. Let's look at something else. Life expectancy for white males is 5 years greater than African American males, and white females live an average of 3 years longer than African American females. Makes a difference. By the way, what's not included in here is the issue as it relates to social class. Social class plays a part. I guess I would be classified as middle class, and therefore, supposedly, I have been able to erase that difference in terms of life expectancy. However, when you look at equality in terms of health care, and you go look at the census in terms of all of the data as it relates to access and treatment of whites versus African Americans, you'll find that in reality, African Americans are less likely to receive the same quality of care as do non-African Americans. So life expectancy is also an issue. Let me move on. Dropout rates. Whites, 6%, African Americans, 10.4%. I know. Let's look at something else. Home ownership. Whites, 72%, African Americans, 47%. So race isn't important. By the way, am I more likely to be stopped driving my vehicle than a non-African American individual? How about that? Doesn't require an answer, just think about it. Yeah. Hate crimes against African Americans, nearly 3 times greater than any other group. Yeah. Now, this is on average. If you were to go into the border states typically, what you would find is that number would change because it would be more likely that individuals that have Hispanic appearances, Hispanic surnames, etc., individuals are more likely to be stopped by the police than many other groups. Income, you see the disparity as well. African Americans are about 11% of the labor force. They're 15% of the working part-time for economic reasons, 22% of the unemployed, 28% of the long-term unemployed, and 25% of marginally attached workers. Still a problem. African Americans are more likely than other groups to experience labor market problems. That means while you're on the job. Okay? So if you have the job, you're more likely to have more difficulty, more problems.
Cedric, I have a question.
Yes.
In regards to the last slide, it was hate crimes are more likely in the African American.
Yes.
Is that in regards, like, has that been taken account into the gay community as well recently? And if so, if the person is gay and African American, is it statistically used as African American or is it used as a gay?
It actually would be recorded as both. The data would actually be teased out in terms of the race of the individual as well as their sexual identity or sexual orientation, assuming that the individual specifies. Okay? Now, you don't always know whether an individual is gay or lesbian, right? You can't look at someone and say, and I know people have those stereotypes. I know, I can tell. No, you can't. Okay? For me, can you tell I'm an African American? By all means. Or some group other than the dominant society. But are you aware that there are Hispanics who have darker skin than I have? Hello. There are Jews that have darker skin than I have. There are other groups that have darker skin than I have. So when it comes to that, yes, even when you tease out the data, you still see that hate crimes toward African Americans is even higher than among gays and lesbians. And people say, well, why? Well, we're easier to identify. If you have a class, I'll give you this example and I'll move on. If you have a class and I'm the only African American in class, do you know when I'm not in class? Do you know if I'm not there? Okay? It's like my wife was asking me about graduation. Do they take attendance? I said, no. But how many African American faculty do we have that you have to count? Do you understand what I'm saying? Real easy to identify me. No, Cedric's not here. Okay. Real easy. Okay? So it becomes an issue that race still, in everything, every aspect of our life, plays a part. And by the way, it's not limited to whites and African Americans. It's Native Americans or Asians or Latinos or you name the group, whoever it is. You ever notice in the conversation? I was talking to an African American guy. I was talking to a white guy. I was talking to an Italian guy. I was talking to a gay guy. I was talking to a lesbian. Why is that important? I was talking to a person. Yeah. As if by identifying them in terms of their group membership, now we have this bond. So all of my African American friends, I was talking to a white guy the other day. What does that have to do with anything? So you stop them in the middle of the conversation. Excuse me, is white guy important? But supposedly now I know where they're coming from. Yep, because you know how they all are. Okay, all whites are the same. All African Americans are the same. All Native Americans are the same. They have a tomahawk on them somewhere. I don't know where it is, but if we walk through the metal detector, they got one. Right? All African Americans carry weapons. GRCC says I can't carry one. So I carry a stiletto. Okay? No guns. Okay? None on campus, so that, okay, it's about like that. Okay? That's okay. All right? Because we have those stereotypes about people. So when you tease this all out, you still find that discrepancy. Hate crimes against African Americans are still 3 times greater than any other group. Yeah. Other questions before I move on? Let's see what else we got. African Americans are more likely than other groups to experience labor problems. We've covered that one. Let's see. Less likely to participate in the labor force than whites. By the way, because African Americans really don't want to work anyway. And you know, all of us have large numbers of children, so we don't have to work. Yeah. Anybody know what the average number of children that African Americans have? And I can tell you now, 6 is not the number. Okay, just to help you out. It's less than that. That's just to give you a clue. Anybody know what it is? What's the average number? You don't know? 2. How long are African Americans on welfare, AFDC, whatever they want to call it these days, on average? It's not 10 years, okay? Not even 5. The average amount of time? 1 year. Most people don't want to be on welfare. They would prefer to have a job. And of course, you know we're doing real well with that, aren't we? Unemployment rate for African Americans is at least 2 times that of whites. Oh, this is by chance. Or African Americans don't want to work. How about this one? Less likely to be employed in management, professional, related occupations than their white counterparts. Why? Real important. African Americans more likely than whites to work in service occupations. Yeah. By the way, service occupations, do they pay a lot? No. Not a lot at all. Can a family of 4 live on minimum wage? Hello? No. No, not at all. Look at this. Median weekly earnings for full-time wage and salary workers are higher for whites than African Americans. $690 for whites versus $554 for African Americans. Yeah, big problems. Let me go through this real quick because I want to move on to something else. I'm almost done and you can ask questions or whatever. The poverty rate, 12.3%, while the rate for African Americans is 24.3%. And of course, we know this is just by chance, right? African Americans account for 13% of the US population. Who's the largest minority group today? Anybody know?
Is it
Hispanics? Hispanics, exactly right. Hispanics are the largest group. African American males make ages 20 to 39, they make up 1/3 of the prison population. If the trend continues, 2 out of 3 Americans will ultimately be in prison. By the way, do African Americans commit more crime than anybody else? What do you think? What's the data say? Excuse me. What do you think? Well, I'll help you out. The answer is no. It's virtual impossibility. Every African American would have to commit a crime every day in order to be equal with their counterparts. But we're more likely to be arrested and charged. And we're more likely to be sentenced to jail or prison time than our counterparts. Last one. How do we bring about change? Well, the first one says we need to continue talking. However, I've come to a conclusion that talking is not doing us really a lot of good. We're talking about it, but we have not yet come to the conclusion that we are responsible for how people are treated. I'm responsible for how I treat you. You might not like me. I don't ask you to like me. All I ask is that we, not just African Americans, but we as a society, treat one another fairly and equally. Yeah. Improve socioeconomic status of minorities. The United States will never be able to be a great nation again until we look at the lowest person on the rung and until we bring them up to equality with the rest of the society. We have to increase minority representation and participation in government. It was nice that President Obama was elected, but if you notice, President Obama has been able to change very little as it relates to the issues of minorities as a whole. It's not sufficient to put one person in one position and say, we have passed the racial society. We are now a colorblind society. We need to reduce disparities in education. For example, how many of you are forced to pay for your own education? Why? Some of you are under 25, some of you live at home, but they say your parents make too much money because we have not changed the rules in terms of educational requirements, in terms of income levels. We need to make sure that people who make, or whose families, et cetera, make $100,000 a year still qualify for financial aid, but we haven't done that. By the way, folks, it's not easy to live on $100,000 a year. I know right now you're thinking, please let me have it. I'll try, okay? But it's still not, okay? Right? Of course, I guess I've been quite fortunate because I have a Maybach parked in the parking lot, and I also have a, let's see, what else do I have out there? I drove one, my wife drove one, okay? Have you seen the picture where you have a Porsche and there are Lamborghini and another car, and it says the benefits or something like that for higher education, and you see it parked in the garage? Don't go into higher education if you're trying to get those cars, okay? It's not easy to live on the income today that people are making. A family of four is going to have to probably, even with minimum wage, apply for food stamps, financial assistance, et cetera, because minimum wage is not enough for a family of four to live on. Raise the consciousness through education about minorities, because believe it or not, we know very little about our own groups, let alone other groups. For example, who was Stokely Carmichael? Anybody recall? Ever heard the name? You remember?
He was associated with the Black Panthers.
Black Panthers? You want to help him out? Stokely Carmichael was an individual who believed that there should be changes in terms of the society. What do you mean? Better education, better access to health care, better access for all African Americans, blacks at that time. Dr. Martin Luther King, everybody knows. Malcolm X, we've all heard of. But it's some of the other little known folks that we know very little about. So we need to do better in terms of education. I'm trying to stop here. So increase minority ownership, reject traditional stereotypes, zero tolerance of intimidation, discrimination, and prejudicial practices. And all of us can do the last one, encourage inclusion and acceptance. Now, where I started was, and the reason I wanted to do this is because a lot of people have said that we are at a colorblind society. We are not. You want to make it colorblind? You can do it. Every single individual here can make a difference. So if you want to do it, all you have to do is to make sure that you don't stereotype people. Yeah. Questions? I know, a great morning topic, right? Yes, Val.
You said that 1 year is the typical rate of welfare for African Americans. If they're more likely to be unemployed, how is that true? Are they just they don't apply as much, or how do they reflect on each other, I guess is the question.
Okay, unemployment in terms of African Americans, in terms of AFDC welfare, et cetera, unemployment, comes about this way. African Americans are less likely to graduate from high school, graduate from college, have certain skills and abilities in terms of our society. Secondly, even not having those skills in some instances, I just showed you high dropout rates, et cetera, in terms of the society. Still, when you show up, your skin color is the first thing that's noticed. So we see the disparity between unemployment and success. If you're employed, you're more likely to own a home, especially if you earn enough money to be able to do so. It's not that people are not applying, but all people get to a point where they stop, regardless of their race or group.
I meant in terms of applying for welfare, not applying themselves. Like, if they're more likely to be unemployed, how does that relate to the welfare?
That means that individuals have to eat, survive. So therefore, what do? You're just going to go home and die? No. Maybe I'm not understanding what you're asking.
I don't think you are. To me, I interpret it as African Americans are still have the same rate as welfare as the dominant race, and then
they don't have the same. Oh, I see where you're going. No, it is not the same numbers. In terms of the percentage of the group, you find that a higher percentage of the African American group is more likely to be on welfare than the percentage of non-minorities to be on welfare. And you say, well, how does that relate? Well, it relates this way, that non-minorities are more likely to be employed than minorities. If Professor Abid and Professor Light and myself applied for the job, the probability of me being hired versus the two of them, okay, my probability is fairly low in terms of the society as a whole. Even having the same credentials. Well, what about affirmative action? Well, actually, affirmative action really hasn't worked well. Has it worked well for some? Yes. Who benefited the most from affirmative action? Anybody know? White females. My group, those individuals that were ready after Brown versus the Board of Education in a certain number of cases that were ready to move into the workplace, they did quite well. However, once they got in, they moved out of inner cities, they moved to suburbs, et cetera, and therefore many of the places are now not as well. Look at Gary, Indiana for a good example. Detroit, Michigan, another good example, et cetera. So what we have to do is to be involved in terms of more inclusion, okay? And that's inclusion in everything. And I don't believe in, if I don't have the qualifications, I should not be hired. I don't believe that. I think that's wrong, okay? The term is known as reverse discrimination. That's wrong, totally. Yes?
I think that what she might have been trying to ask you is if minorities are less likely to be employed or to be discriminated in so many areas, how is it that they're only on welfare for just 1 year? if you're not getting the job, you know, you're out trying to make money, things of that nature, how can you say that they're only on welfare for just a year? I think that may be what she's trying to say.
Because
Am I right?
what they do, thank you, what tends to happen is this. People move in and out of the workplace, and they're more likely to be engaged in part-time work rather than full-time work. And based upon the rules of welfare, if you earn too much money, you can't get it. What do you get? Food stamps? Maybe. And there are reasons that we have the problems that we have within the society. And are all of them based upon race? No. Some of it is because of the economy. Anybody looking for a job? Yeah, we got a few of you looking. Why don't you have one? I'm sorry? I've turned down 3 jobs. You've turned down 3?
Yeah.
Oh.
I think the jobs that are available are of lower pay, but there's definitely jobs out there if you're going to work at it. I put over 100 resumes in and done over probably 20 interviews, so you just got to work hard at it, I suppose.
You do. And so you've turned down 3 jobs. Would you tell the other folks where you turned those down so that they can go get those?
One job was at PRGX out by Broadmoor Airport. That was filled.
Okay.
The 2 other jobs, one was at Hangar Plus in Coopersville. That job was filled as well. There was 2 candidates, myself and another. Because of opportunity cost for me, it was better for that candidate, I suppose. And then the 3rd job, I will actually go ahead and keep that one.
You're going to take?
So
Oh, you're going to keep that.
it's a little embarrassing, so.
But that's okay. Now let's see. I live in the inner city. I do have a bike. How do I get to Coopersville? Is there a bus that goes there? Absolutely not. Shoots Coopersville. Let's see if we can find another one. You see where I'm going? I mean, the problems become compounded when you are in a low socioeconomic status anyway. And the way that people stay off of welfare is, especially now that the governor has signed the legislation that says maximum of 4 years, where they just dump people. If you've done 4 years, you're off. We're done. But I need it. We don't care. Go elsewhere. So what you find is people tend to work lots of part-time jobs. 4 hours, just a minute, 4 hours at one place, 4 hours at another place. One place I work 2 days a week, another place I work 3 days a week. And I try to put all of that together. I'm sorry I misunderstood what you were asking, so thank you. Yes?
Do you believe African Americans are owed reparations? And if so, who owes us?
Well, let me first of all preface it this way. You're not going to get it. That's number one. Okay, now I'll deal with the other parts of it, okay? Yes, we are owed reparations, but we're not going to get it in terms of our society unless possibly there are only African Americans left on the planet. Okay? I believe African Americans are owed reparations, but only in this sense. For those individuals that have been victims of slavery or they are offspring of former slaves, then my answer to your question is yes. We paid the Japanese. Native Americans are still seeking reparations in lots of different areas. And the reparations are not always in terms of money. Sometimes it's land. They want their land back. Should we get certain things? Yeah. I'll take 40 acres and a mule. No interest. Just give me the 40 acres and the mule. Good for me. Okay? I can feed myself. But hopefully you're not holding your breath for those reparations.
Professor Williams, one of the things that we talked about in African American history class is the issue of reparations, but also this notion of a shared responsibility. Who's responsible? In other words, should it only be those people who directly benefited from the institution of slavery? In other words, corporations that can trace their their original profits back to that slave owning era, or is it the responsibility of the entire American people and the American government for focusing on issues like that?
Everybody's responsible. Every single corporation, business, etc., is responsible. I didn't have an equal chance. I wasn't even here. I wasn't alive. So what? You benefit. Okay? There's a book you need to read at some point in your life. It's called White Man's Burden. Read it. There's another one that you need to read by W.E.B. Du Bois called Soul of Black Folks, because we have to take responsibility as well. Hello. I know this is going to be new, different. It wasn't my fault. They made me do it. Can you stop people from making you do something? Yes, but you might die. Of course. What happened during the Holocaust? Large numbers of people died. What's going on today? Large numbers of people are still dying in this country even because they don't have enough to eat. There are children that go to bed every night hungry in the United States of America, one of the richest countries on the planet. How many of you participate in a food pantry? I'm not talking about the one at the college. How many of you participate in a food pantry? Way to go. Thank you, folks. When you go to the grocery store, pick up a few extra cans and take it to the neighborhood food pantry. Take it to the neighborhood church, Salvation Army, Goodwill. Yeah, Mike, we're all responsible. That's corporations. I'm going to come back to you. That's corporations, that's businesses, that's everybody. Whether you were alive or not, you benefit. Regardless of the color of your skin, you benefit. Where on the planet can you go and find 24-hour grocery stores? Can you find that in every country around the world? Hopefully you've traveled. No. You know what the poor do in lots of countries? They eat off of the garbage dump. They go through trash cans. Guess what they do in this country? They go through trash cans. Have any of you seen the folks out by wherever with a sign, willing to work for food? Hungry. Need work. What do? While I'm having my Big Mac, fries, large shake. They need to get a job is what they need to get. Are there enough jobs for everybody? No. And the society is designed so that there's going to be a certain percentage of unemployment needed for the society. Anybody going into social work? Okay. You know where your folks will come from? You'll be taking care of the people who don't have. But what if everybody had a job and was employed? Would we need you as a social worker? Probably not. So the unemployment benefits me, okay? That's why here at Grand Rapids Community College, if there was somewhere else to go and you could afford to go, would you go? Yeah, you might have to. I'm sorry, young man, go ahead.
About your, you said your reprimands, you said we all owe?
Yes.
Who?
We owe every individual that we treated wrongly. Every individual that was brought to this country in chains, the folks who died on the way, we owe their families. We owe every individual, regardless. And by the way, all of it isn't based upon slavery. There are people who died for me to be able to be where I am today. I'm not here out of the goodness of somebody's heart. Somebody died so I could be here. Yeah. When you check it out, go back and look it up. There were 2 boys that went down south and lost their lives. And because of that, I get to be here. The little girls that were going into the schools and nobody wanted them there. How about the little girls that were killed in the bombing of churches? We all owe. I owe you the decency to treat you as a human being. Do you see where I'm going? And if I don't do that, I'm guilty and I owe. Say, well, how do you pay for that? How do you quantify that? Well, I'll let somebody else quantify it. But I still owe you, and I should treat you decently. And that's for everybody. You have the same thing or same responsibility that I have towards you for you to treat me the same way. It's not whether you like me or not. It's, as a human being, do I deserve the right to be treated respectfully, equally, fairly? I got one in the back first, and I'll come to you next. Yes?
On your points of the dropout rate,
yes,
and unemployment, lower income, and mortality rate,
yes,
would you say that is rooted in racism or more so in education?
Well, both actually play a part in this because, unfortunately, in education, most educators are actually middle-class individuals. So they tend to teach what is known as the hidden curriculum, and therefore, we have in the United States, some schools even in Grand Rapids, that we practice social promotion. You're a problem in my class, and I don't know if you're in my class or not, but you're in my class. I don't want to see you next semester, so guess what I do? Oh yeah, he passes. Not with a great grade, but he passes, so I don't have to see you anymore. And so if you become a problem in terms of elementary, junior high, and high school, then yes. So they're linked together. In other words, there is definitely a correlation between those.
The reason I ask is because you had listed that the dropout rate percentage was higher for African Americans, which would make sense to me that they would be more likely to be employed in the service industry because you would have to have a lesser education. And as for the higher paying jobs, you need a higher education to receive higher employment, which would continue into a circle of having to be in a impoverished area, which would lead into the lower mortality rate. So it seemed to me that education played a larger part into it, and I 100% agree that racism is a factor. Okay. But it seemed that education was very important into the circle.
Okay, let me address that. Let's look at it this way. Let's look at it in terms of Grand Rapids and just Grand Rapids by itself. If I go to a Grand Rapids elementary, junior high, and high school compared to a Lowell elementary, junior high, and high school, am I more likely or less likely to go on, first of all, to graduate from high school in Lowell or in Grand Rapids? Lowell. Secondly, am I more likely, in terms of that education, to be better prepared for college, the higher education, et cetera, in the Lowell school versus Grand Rapids? So now, you're right, there is a correlation between the two, but you can't say that education is more important. Because what happens is an individual gets treated differently, not based upon where they are in the education, but based upon skin color. People don't pull me over and say to me, "Excuse me, sir," based upon me being a member of the dominant society? No. Do they say Dr. Williams when they pull me over? No. Do you see where I'm going?
Yes, and I believe that racism exists. I'm not denying that. I just thought it was interesting that you were making the points of unemployment as opposed to the dropout rate. I'm not disputing the fact that racism exists.
No.
I agree with that.
Yeah, I understand. It's just that because there is a relationship between those two, you're trying to figure out which one is more important.
Correct.
So it becomes a chicken or the egg. Well, when they actually do the research on it and you remove the educational issues, you find out that race is still more important, even if you hold everything else constant.
So you would say that a Caucasian male and an African American male, if they were both to drop out same time, same area, that the white male would have a better chance in life than the African American male?
Yeah, and all the data shows just that white males with the same amount of education that African Americans have still have higher income levels, even though we're talking about at the same level in terms of education. Same, okay? That white males have higher incomes than do non-white males. Yeah. And so you're right, it's a good point, but you just have to understand, while there is a correlation, understand that at this point, you cannot make it in terms of a cause and effect relationship. That is, education causes, do you see where I'm going? The other issues, okay, because of that overlap. I know I've got a question over here too.
Thank you so much for the information that you've presented. One of the things that I think contributes to the myth of the post-racial society, and I'm not sure if you would agree, is the increase of interpersonal relationships among various races, as opposed to the structural issues of racism. And I just wonder if you would speak to that a little bit.
Well, if you look at, let's say, interracial relationships, okay, you find that there has been an increase, but that was not the major reason for the declaration of the myth of the post-racial society. It came about by saying that since individuals of color have made it into certain positions, now they have an equal opportunity with everybody in the society. Wrong. A white child born today and an African American child born today they're not born equally. Even in the same hospital, with the same doctor and the same medication, they're still not equal. Say, wait a minute, something's wrong. They're in the same hospital. Why aren't they equal? What's going on? The reason that it's not equal, you talked about the structural issues. You have poor whites in the society that are in the same boat that African Americans are, but they're able to get by because they're able to blend. You see where I'm going? A person that comes here from another country that has very fair skin, blonde hair, blue eyes, blend. Okay? All right, easy for them to become a part of the dominant society. I get here just off the boat. I speak English quite well, but I just came from Senegal, or I came from Ethiopia, or wherever. Is it as easy for me to blend? No. Opportunity-wise? No. The structural changes that we have within our society, while there have been improvements, they're not where they need to be. We do not have the safety net we really ought to have today for every individual within the society. And until we get to that point, we're not going to make it. Now, there have been an increase in, as you say, interracial relationships, but that's not where that's coming from. Most people want to move on from here because they believe, look, I don't treat people differently. I treat everybody the same. But it doesn't matter when you go to fill out an application. If the person that I go fill out the application is a racist or is prejudiced or whatever, and there's not equal treatment between myself and Professor Light, then they might tear mine up. Oh, you didn't get the job. You're not as qualified as Professor Light. The reason that people want to move on from here is because of the backlash toward affirmative action. I got the job here at Grand Rapids Community College, some people would say, because of affirmative action. Wrong. I had to beat out a lot of folks to get this job. You see where I'm going? But the perception is you're here because of affirmative action. William Julius Wilson, who I do know, also went to my alma mater, Northwestern. And we were talking one day, and he said, when I went to school, the perception was quite different. We didn't have affirmative action, he said, during his day. The perception was, when he's in school, he had to be good to get there. For me, you're here because we need a quota. Do you see where I'm going? So now people want to move on. We've done enough. We've dealt with this long enough. We don't deal with it anymore. It's done with. Everybody is treated equally. We live in a colorblind society. Right. So why is it that, let's see, Myers, Walgreens, Family Fare, etc., doesn't provide or carry all of the African-American hair products that, do you see where I'm going? Why don't they carry that? I'm one of their patrons. I go to Walgreens. I go to D&W, Family Fare. Why don't they carry my products? Encourage me to shop there. They want me to go to Hair Joy. When's the most racist time? Sunday morning. So we separate on Sunday morning. I go to church, and there are all African Americans in the church, and the choir comes in. Right? Now, when I go to another section of town, and it's non-white, and then we're all with the choir and the hymnal, etc. Why do we do that? Why haven't we integrated? You see where I'm going? So really what people want to do is to move on from that point in terms of affirmative action. So they're really trying to get it to the point where we can say enough is enough. I don't remember the man's name in terms of trying to get rid of affirmative action. Remember this whole issue with University of Michigan? Affirmative action. Oh, no, you can't do that anymore. Oh, okay. So now we want to do it based upon test scores, right? And the one thing we know is ACT, SAT, all of those scores or tests are what? They're biased. Yeah. They ought to let me create the test. And I'll do it from an African American perspective, and then we'll see how many whites pass it, how many Hispanics pass it. I was down the street and I happened to see an alley apple. Huh? What? Whoa. You see where I'm going? On the regular test, you read quiche, Q-U-I-C-H-E. I read it as quickie, African American. Quickie. Oh, okay. Makes a difference what my answer is, isn't it? One's like an egg custard, folks, for those of you that don't know in terms of quiche. Quickie is something else. Did I answer your question? Okay. Yes?
If affirmative action should be taken away and reparations are still needed or owed, then I don't understand why society doesn't just kind of move on as a whole and just not forget about what happened, obviously celebrate it with things like Black History Month and other things like that, but just kind of move on and not expect anything. I mean, obviously you said not to expect them, but they're still talked about.
Yeah, it's going to be talked about no matter what. We're talking about the Holocaust, even though we've moved on from that. That's in order so that it doesn't occur again. First of all, the reparations are not going to be paid. I agree with you that what we should do is to pay the reparations, we move on, everybody has an equal chance. Okay? I agree. We should do that. Are we going to do that as a nation? No. Can we do it? Yes. Will we? No. Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. Over here first, and I'll come back to you.
Hi, I'm the immigrant mother of a mixed-race daughter.
Right.
What steps do you think I can take to help her become an integrated member of society?
Make sure she knows her racial heritage, all parts of it. I don't care what group she comes from, whatever it is. My daughter is African American, white, and Native American. She will know all of those. Do you see where I'm going? And then she will get to choose what group she wants to identify with. I know what the society will say. You have this color skin, you have this, etc., but we already know, and you should already know, that race is really something that doesn't exist. Okay? It's not real. Okay? So you make sure that she knows about whatever. Immigrant status, the parent status, okay, mother and father, as well as all of her ancestry. I come from here, 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 and here. And all of us are mixed. There's no such thing as a pure race. It doesn't exist. The gene pool is so mixed that you don't know what you're going to get when that baby comes out. So you get a person who has blonde hair, blue eyes, and you get a redhead baby, and you're like, whoa, whoa, wait a minute. Okay, something's up. No, we need to do some DNA checking here. Okay, because Dad's a little concerned now. Okay, Dad's like, I got blonde hair, blue eyes. Mom's got blonde hair, blue eyes. We need to make some changes, okay, to check some things out. So you teach them about their heritage. Second thing, you raise them as a multicultural child, not only as one thing, because the society wants to put us in a box. That's why I told you I'm African American and Native American, okay? And I want you to understand that we are all mixed with something. So we all come from somewhere. And even Native Americans are not pure Native Americans because you have to trace their history back and you find out where they literally come from. So make sure you do that. The other thing is try your best to live in a multicultural neighborhood and make sure that she's exposed to everything that is multicultural. Okay? Don't let her play with just this kind of doll. All different kinds of dolls, but not only dolls, but dump trucks or whatever. Expose them so that they can have a good imagination, creativity. Don't try to put them in a box. No, this is your aisle. We're at Toys R Us, pink. This is your aisle. Go down this aisle. Okay? That's the girls' aisle. Okay? Let her go down some of the other aisles. It's okay. All right? They're not going to be, oh, she's going to be gay. Going down the boys' aisle. That's not going to happen. That's not the way it works, folks. Okay? Yeah. Yes?
I got a question.
Okay.
If I was to move to a predominantly African-American country and try to integrate into that society, would I receive the same level of discrimination as African-Americans do here?
No. And actually, we don't have to go to another country. Watch this. Just go to Heritage Hill. Gentrification. The people with money moved into a community that is primarily Hispanic and African American. And you know what? They're accepted. We don't have lots of problems, lots of crimes, etc. You want to go to Africa, people are going to know you right off the bat. Yes, no way to hide. Oh, you're not from here, are you? No. Okay, if everybody has dark skin, right? Curly hair, and you're like, no, I'm not from here. Okay, where are you from? Oh, the US. Oh, America. Oh, great, everybody's rich in America. Because that is a lot of times the perception of people that come from other countries here. But you're not gonna find that. Because in other countries, people are less likely to deal with the race as they are to deal with the country you're from. Oh, what are you? I'm Italian. You said immigrant, right? Do you mind identifying? No, I come from England. England, okay? So if I go to England, where are you from? America. If I go to Japan, where are you from? Do you see where I'm going? It's less about race than it is about where you are in the world. Even when it comes to slavery, slavery in other parts of the world was entirely different than here in the United States. I know I'm running out of time here. In other countries around the world, slavery was treated this way. I don't like you as a slave owner, I can go down the street and be a slave for somebody else. Here, my children, my offsprings, are all slaves that belong to this one person. And I don't get to move. treated differently. So slavery existed in other parts of the world. The United States just perfected it. Okay, wait a minute, just a minute, excuse me. There was somebody back there in the back who had their hand up before this young man did. Okay, so let me do her first and then I'll come back to you.
You were just saying to raise your children that it's not a race or whatever, but still, if you're in the inner city and you are copying books on the copy machine and passing out papers and not getting the same education, how is that going to help the situation any? Well, they're still not getting the education and the equal opportunities.
That's where the parent has to take responsibility. We cannot put everything on somebody else.
I mean, I'm not saying like you can do, but if you don't have the materials needed, like in my case, I just basically drive them to another place, but then they even got stipulations where you can't do that in some places because they got it where you can't transfer your kids.
Right. But let me ask you a question. If your child brings home a geography problem and you don't know how to do it, what do?
I'll find out.
Exactly right.
But I'm just one of the lucky ones that have that opportunity, but there's people who can't afford to do the things that I can do.
We have a mentoring program here at the college where people go out to different schools and they spend time reading to children. The difficulty here is this: the parent determines everything. If the parent spends the time and the effort, there is somebody that will listen. Okay? If I'm not mistaken, and I'm not sure that they're still here, but if I'm not mistaken, there was, I believe one of the trustees is here, sitting back in the second row. I believe so. I could be wrong.
You want her to stand up?
No, I don't want her to stand up, but I don't want to put her on the spot. But here's what I'm trying to get you to understand. Somebody has information somewhere. You know what happens? Watch this. When there is a truck that gives away free food, you folks talk to anybody? You call anybody? Hey, listen, over here, go over here. Let's go over here. Let's go over there. What about if, Minister Louis Farrakhan was in town? There wasn't a lot of announcement, but there was a lot of people there. How did they find out? Thank you. We got a grapevine for everything. If somebody needs help, you pick up the phone and you call somebody. If you don't have it, and the parent is the first person in terms of responsibility. Now, this is Grand Rapids Community College. You got a problem, you don't know. One of the trustees back there. Professor Light is the department head. Pick up the phone and call him. Do you see where I'm going? I don't know how to do this problem.
4298.
I'm trying to get you, because see, what has happened is we as parents have said that the school is responsible, but the school can't do everything. So I have to take responsibility, which says when my child goes to school, that my child is prepared. That's number one. When they go, I'm not just sending them off into no man's land. Do you know what I want them to do? What did you do today? What did you learn today? That's like this presentation. What'd you learn? Nothing. We just went for an hour and a half. I got my credit. We move on. Well, if you didn't learn anything, we've wasted our time. Yes, ma'am.
I'm saying, like, my son, for instance, I took him out of Grand Rapids Public Schools because he brought a B+ paper home that was a paper he wrote. And it didn't have a period, a question mark, any kind of punctuation, but he got a B+ on the paper. So I basically removed him from the school because the teacher's answer to me was he was one of the better students in the class and she graded it on a curve. Well, that's not going to help him when he get to college.
Not at all.
I was able to take him out to school, but there's other parents who can't take him out to school.
I agree. I understand. But watch this. You took your child out of the school. Why?
Because I'm working full time, I need to make sure he's getting his education so that he can better himself.
How about the other 20-some children or whatever number in the class that are still there? What about them?
That's my question. What is it that we can do to help them?
When everybody takes the child out and demands that the teachers teach them what they need to know before they move on, do you see where I'm going? Things will change. That's where I was talking about, where instead of pulling it out and saying, wait a minute, I can take care of my child. Well, that's good, but you've left 20 children behind you. Do you see where I'm going? One of the things that we've got to get over in terms of education is this. One person's not responsible. No way. If you have a problem, then you need to go get some help for the problem. Now, supposedly, as community college students, because I believe most of these are students, I don't know if you are or not, but watch this. If most of these individuals are students and they have a problem, what are they supposed to do? I just drop out, I quit. Go get some help. We provide help, we provide assistance. Why would I give a student a B with no punctuation in a paper? I just collected it. Because it's easier for me to what? Grade on the curve. Then, if I grade on the curve, I don't have to hear from you. Oh, you got a B. Great, we're done. Put that one over there or put it on the refrigerator or whatever, but it doesn't prepare you for the next level. That's problematic. So what has to happen is the community has to come together and say, we're not going to accept this anymore. How we deal with each other? The same way. What about when you're in a group and somebody's telling a joke about some group? Well, there were 3 people standing on a bridge and yada, 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 yada. Do you see where I'm going? Whoa, 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 we're not listening to that. That's unacceptable. But most of the time we're, and then we go and tell somebody else, oh, did you know, man, this guy was over here talking. Well, why didn't we say something then? Because we didn't want to be viewed as different. The one thing that I've learned in terms of growing older is I don't care. You can think of me whatever you want to think. That's fine. Okay? But here's what I do know. I'm responsible for telling you the truth and then treating you as a human being in all situations. What you do is band together with your parents in that class. Did you see this? This is unacceptable. We're going to the school tomorrow as a group. And I know it's hard, especially if you're a single parent. Real difficult. But you also know if your child does not achieve a certain level, that child's going to have difficulty for the rest of their life. Yeah, I'm sorry, young man.
What is the prognosis? Like, how far into the future do you project when American society will become colorblind?
I don't think we ever will. And it's not because we can't. I don't think that we really want to, because some people get certain benefits. By the way, this is my personal philosophy. I'm not a complete conflict theorist, but I do believe in certain parts of it. I believe that the rich continue to have us at each other's throat in order to laugh all the way to the bank. So I don't like you and you don't like me, and they laugh all the way to the bank. I was talking to Professor Light about his iPad. You know where the iPads are made typically? China. How about those Nikes or Reeboks or whatever you're wearing? Do you see where I'm going? And what's the markup? And how much do we pay those folks in China, Thailand, etc.? Do you see where I'm going? Now, we could stop them from doing that. We could actually make them bring the work back to the United States, quit buying it until they do. Okay, I saw you looking at my shoes. Mine are made in the U.S. Okay, you want to know. Okay, there. Okay, so what we could do is we could stop the problem that she was talking about when we, as a society, decide to change it. But most of the time, you know what we're like? Man, I got a car, I got a wife, I got a daughter, I got a pocket full of money. Well, not so much that, but anyway, I'll use that example. And do I care about you? Nah. You get through, fine. Okay, so what? You don't get through? I had a student send me an email the other day that they were going to drop my class, and I asked them not to drop it. Keep going. You don't quit. I'm having difficulty. That's all right, come on, just keep going. Let's see what happens. There's no need of dropping halfway through. You done paid your money. That's like me going to the movie, and I got my popcorn and my pop, and I get there, and I'm like, man, this is a really bad movie, but I at least need to see what it's like, so at least I can critique it. If you leave halfway through, do you know what happened? And by the way, maybe it gets better. Nothing else, I can enjoy my popcorn and pop. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I enjoyed being here this morning. Thank you for your tolerance.